Hello guys, to ranking another line in Nerf. Today we'll be taking a look at one of the biggest lines, Rival. So just to let you know, this won't be all of Rival. This will be also like Adventure Force Rival stuff and X-Shot Rival stuff. It's going to be every Rival thing that has ever existed, I'm pretty sure. I've done my best. Today is going to be a very long episode. There are 58 blasters to rank. And Rival is a very interesting line because it was made for adults and then somewhat changed. But we know Rival. It fires balls. It took the world by storm. It's still one of the main ammos to use in Nerf. It's crazy. And with that, well, let's just get started with the list, shall we? Coming in at 58 is the Sentry. This thing is the Venture Force pistol of a Kronos. Don't worry, the Kronos will be farther down the line. But this is just a very, very crappy blaster because it has a trigger lock, which is very big and just not in a good spot and just crappy. Everything else is pretty much fine except how it feeds. It is just it's just gravity fed. 5 rounds gravity fed, so sometimes it just won't feed. Why the Kronos is better because it uses a spring. This is just gravity fed. Gravity fed rival blasters do not work well. It just doesn't work well. So this guy sits 58th because of its just jamming issues and not fully loading or just not loading at all because of its gravity fed 5-round magazine, hopper, whatever you want to call it. It kind of sucks, to be honest with you. But it is only $10, so, I mean, it comes with costs if you want to spend something, buy something for that cheap. At 57 is the only Magnums, I believe, that has ever been a rival thing, and that's the Apex. The Apex is pretty cool, to be honest with you. I really wanted it to be higher, but I just couldn't. Because, like I said, it is a rival Magnum. It's 5-round cylinder that you load 5 rounds into. The issue is you have to shove them all the way down, and then you're ready to fire. Still has that dumb trigger, blocking thing that you have to press down. Still dumb. It looks like a rev trigger. It is not. And the issue with this guy is after those 5 rounds, you have to reload it again, and this thing takes just a very, very long time to reload. 5 rounds goes pretty fast in Rival, and it just doesn't work well in a Magnum. And that's why this guy sits 57th. The Magnum, man, I really wish it could work in Rival. It just doesn't. You have to push the rounds way too far in. You can shotgun it, but it's so bad. If you shotgun it, it's just not worth it. And here's the first actual Rival blaster coming in at 56, the Overwatch McCree. Everyone was so excited for this thing because they thought this was going to be the real, Nerf Rival Magnum. But instead, we got a really weird working one-shot Rival Blaster. And one-shot Rival Blasters are not very useful, especially when they're massive. This thing is giant for a one-shot Rival Blaster. Don't get me wrong, it's still a cool blaster, and I think how it primes and how it works, just how many mechanics had to go into this thing, is a very interesting blaster. That's why I couldn't put this thing last. It's a little bit better. I had fun when I used it. You can also, get some shells to throw in here, print out some shells to use. There are its ups with this guy, because it is a really fun blaster. It's very interesting. It looks cool. Even the hammer moves back. It doesn't do anything, but you can prime and fire the hammer. And it has a cool little chaps thing on it. Little spinning blades at the end. Its issue is it's just one shot, and it was disappointing because it's supposed to be a Magnum. That's its issue. And it even comes with 6 rounds. It only fires 1. It was just a very disappointing blaster when it came out, and that's why it stays here. It is just a really oversized one-shot blaster. At 55, this dang thing. The chaos is awful. In my opinion, it is terrible. It has a really weird feeding mechanism where you pull down a lip thing, you load 6 rounds, it does hold 6 rounds, and you press a button to fire it back up and have its spring activate. But there's just times where, like, definitely in my opinion, where this thing just wouldn't load, refused to load. It has locks in it, so sometimes it just doesn't want to prime back, which is very dumb and weird. Too many locks, and also sometimes if you don't load it right, it will just drop ammo. If you don't load it right, it will just drop all its 6 rounds on the ground because the loading mech is pointing downwards, which is a very dumb thing to do with how this loading mech works. It's 55 because it's just way too many locks. It just doesn't work. It has too many issues that they put into this thing to make it work well. This thing will never work perfect. It always has issues. And that's why it's 55. And 54 is the gold version because it's gold. At 53 is the Helix. The Helix, sorry. The Helix. The Helix is a very interesting blaster. It holds a lot of ammo. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 12. I think, yeah, 24 rounds. but it holds, I think, 24 rounds in this double hopper thing. Its issue is it's another gravity-fed blaster. And gravity-fed blasters, most of the time, do not work without some help. And this thing definitely has its costs. It is just a shotgun prime. Feels nice, it's a decent thing. Needs a stock, but it's okay. Its issue is with the gravity-fed, sometimes it just doesn't load. It just doesn't load sometimes, and that's the issue why this thing is not higher up on this list. Because this thing is cool, but because it's gravity fed, it just doesn't load sometimes. It's pretty much the issues that Hyper has. Without something to help it gravity feed it into it, it doesn't work with just gravity. Rival balls just don't. So that's why it's 53rd, the first rifle on this list. At 52 is the Apollo, sorry. Reading issues, the Apollo is the first rival blaster that was ever released. And why is it 52? Well, it is magazine. Magazine. You put a magazine in its handle. It usually comes with a 7-round magazine. And overall, it works well. My issue is its priming bar sucks. Its priming bar is that black thing at the very top, and Nerf, what the hell were you thinking? That priming bar is absolute garbage. It sucks. It really does. It works, but it's just bad. It's not comfortable. It's not useful. You could have just put it on the side instead of, taking up your view so you can never see where you're actually aiming at. And that's about it. It has just a very weird shape. It was a very interesting blaster in my opinion. No stock, but it is flat, and you can use it as a stock. It works. The biggest issue, also the handle's very, very big, but that's to, get around the magazine. Trigger is okay. The priming bar is just so bad. Priming bar is awful. That's why it's 52. And that's also why Modders has made this thing shotgun prime and stuff with 3D printed parts, because its priming bar is just that bad. And at 51 is the Deadpool version. It just adds a little bit more than just a red side. Gives you a face and Deadpool letters. 51. 50 is the Star Wars Apollo. This one I think looks pretty cool. It's based on Boba Fett. And I like the colors to go with it. The green works with the white and red, the stripes. And I like how the stripes are kind of like wearing off and somewhat. I think it just looks very nice and really good. And that's why this one is 50th. And the last Apollo on this list. At 49, hear me out on this one. I have a lot to say. This one is another magazine-fed blaster, and this is a really, really cool Star Wars blaster. Don't get me wrong. but my issue is its priming bar is even worse than the Apollo, but looks better, so I put it a little bit higher up on the list. Its priming bar, you won't be able to see, it's on the other side, and it's a thing that flips up, and it's a really, really small piece of plastic that I feel like can break off pretty easily. And that's why this thing's 49, because the look, the feel, everything about this is awesome, but that priming bar, again, why does it rival with its priming bars? Its priming bar sucks a lot, because that's a priming bar that can actually snap off, and that's really crappy. At 48 is the Roundhouse. I have a lot of issues with the Roundhouse. Me personally, I do not like this blaster at all. It's pretty much just a really, really big Kronos for no reason at all. It has a loading mech, which you have to open it and load 3 rounds into each hopper type thing. And it takes way too long to reload, and it's way too big to be a pistol, and I just don't think this would be a good blaster to use in a battle, just because how long it takes to reload, just like the Apex, the Magnum ones from the other one. It's not the best design, I don't feel. Way too long to reload. Everything else works. It's for a pistol, it's way too big and takes way too long to reload. Those are my issues with this thing, and that's why it's 48. At 47 is the Sidewinder. The Sidewinder is a very interesting blaster. It has a internal magazine, just like this one, but a little bit different. You can't tell, it's just kind of a straight curved line magazine. And it's a very weird looking blaster, and I don't think there's a lot wrong with it, to be honest with you. The stock really doesn't work, but that's fine. This is just gonna look like a space age blaster anyways. Side prime. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Like, I think it's like 12 to 15 rounds or something. I don't know much about this thing. This is also from the curve shot line. So up front you can turn its barrel to curve the rounds, which really does not work, but it's kind of cool to use. It just doesn't work though. And overall, it's just a meh blaster. I've also seen people opening this thing up and breaking it really fast. Only sometimes. I think those were just lemons though. I think this thing has more to offer than just that. And overall, this is just a not it's just a meh blaster. So that's why it's 47. At 46 is the Vision. The Vision is another internal magazine blaster that holds 8 rounds in a magazine fed thing in their, internal magazine. My issues with this is the handle is not great, just because how it has a switch from the blue to the yellow. It's a little bit weird feeling, and the priming bar is weak. Not in the sense where you can't prime it, in the sense where it like moves a lot. It's very flexible and it's not cool. That's why this thing sits 46. The flexibleness of this priming bar is just not good. It should not be that way. Everything else is pretty decent though. It's just the priming bar that's bad. At 45 is the Finisher. The Finisher is a very interesting blaster once again. Handle fine. The trigger is very, very weird. I'm not a fan of the trigger. It's a weird trigger. But how it works is you prime it back, and the barrel in front pushes out, and then when you prime it forward, it'll push the barrel back in to load a round. This is a magazine-fed blaster that feeds in from the bottom. The issues with this thing, with just how this thing works, it has issues, it has jams, but it's still a really cool pistol, and the only actual pistols you can probably holster that takes a magazine. It's very interesting, but with its jamming issues and stuff like that, I cannot put it any higher than 45, It's a pretty useful blaster, but the jamming issues send it down a little bit. At 44 is the Hades. The Hades was supposed to be an amazing blaster, and it's just not. It's just not. Issues is that stock is probably one of the worst stocks I have ever felt. It's just too small and too rounded. It's just really, really bad. And another issue is its springs are, it's an internal magazine that holds 60 rounds, pump action, which sounds awesome. But the issue with that is because the springs are so long, it just has a lot of feeding issues and a lot of jamming issues. Like, I have never been able to fire this thing. I've never been able to fire all 60 rounds out of this thing without at least jamming once. It's crazy. It has slam fire, but slam fire just makes the jamming worse. And this was going to be such an amazing blaster, but I just couldn't. It has too many issues with jamming. A lot of issues too. This is probably the blaster that jams the most on this entire list. And with that, it sits 44. At 44 is the Ranger. The Ranger is pretty much the rival version of the Jolt. You shove 3 rival balls all the way into the back of this thing, prime it down, pull the trigger. It is weak for rival, but does what it needs to do. It's a good sidearm. Pull the trigger, fire a ball out. That's about it. Rotating cylinders. And it works. As a last-ditch effort for a rival battle, it works. It works well. And there's nothing really bad to say. This is a good sidearm. And that's why it sits 43. The trigger is very weird. It's trigger. It's not very good or bad, but it's just eh. Priming bar, amazing. You can also mod this thing to hit insanely hard. Plunger tube is massive in this guy. At 43 is another Overwatch blaster, the Overwatch Yellow Diva. This guy is very interesting. It looks very cool. You prime it back and it has a internal hopper or magazine or whatever. I think it's magazine that holds 3 balls. You put 3 balls in it and you can fire them off, and it works pretty well and looks pretty nice. But the issue is it's big, and for only 3 balls, 3 rounds, it's not very useful. That's why it sits 42. 41 is the one I prefer. I prefer the the pink version, which is the original, and you can see this one a bit better. You would prime this guy back, top prime, and at the very top, the little like square gap is where you load 3 balls into it. And it's very cool. As a cosplay piece, this is awesome, but just as an actual rival blaster, it's not that great. And at 40 is pretty much the same thing, but for Tracer. Another 3 rounds, and I just think the Tracer blaster looks way cooler, and running it on the field with 2 of these is awesome. Also, I don't know why, but this thing is so expensive. Last one I ever saw, it was like $130 to buy one. It's just crazy. But I do like the look of this one. But yet again, it's too big for only 3 rounds, because you could just buy this guy. But I put these guys slightly above it because they just look cooler. And with that, we're out of the 40s on the 30s. The Titanium. This is some older stuff, but it's still pretty dang good. This is pump action, has a hopper on the top, which is also just gravity fed, but this one works a little bit better. But you can also just jostle this one around a lot, because this thing hits hard, it's pump action, it does what it needs to do, and you can also just remove the hopper and replace it with another, which is awesome. This thing, you can put rival magazines in it, but it won't hold them there. That's an issue. But it wasn't made for rival mags, and these hoppers work. They work decently. They hold a few rounds here and there, like, I don't know, 10 to 15. And this thing just got the power, and that's all that matters. This was a really good cheap offer to get into rival. At 38 is the electric version of it, the very first electric blaster on this list, which has an even bigger hopper, which I think are not compatible because they don't work. But this is semi-auto, and it worked pretty decently, to be honest. Nothing wrong with it. It just doesn't have that big a capacity, and there's also the chance of it not firing every time. But it's still a really useful blaster to have. Electric, semi-auto, hopper fed. I mean, that sounds useful to me. At 37 is the Flex. The Flex is another one from the curved shot line. And how this one works is you pull the priming bar down, it opens its chamber, you load one round, you push its chamber shut, and you're ready to fire one round. It has some ball storage on the side, and it's also, like I said, a curve shot, so you can also move the barrel to the left or right to make it curve. One-shot blasters are not very useful in Rival, but this thing, it would just be fun. These are just fun, useful sidearms. And this is the worst on the list because holstering this guy, it just won't work just because it's, hell is places to hold ammo. It just won't work to holster this guy. And there's no way you're running this as your main for only one Rival round. But overall, it's pretty decent. It has a lot of power. That's why it sits 37. At 36 is the next one on this list, the Knockout. The Knockout I put above the Flex because it has some more stuff that you have to do, but how it has rival ball storage on the side, it's better shaped, so this thing is definitely holsterable, and this would be a really, really good pistol to use. How this one works is you prime it down, but you also have to push it back up, and then you open its chambers, load around, shut the chamber, and fire. This thing's really fun and just really good to use, and a really good sidearm, to be honest with you. The Knockout, never go wrong with a one-shot rival blaster. With the Knockout anyways. At 35 is this guy. This guy is a really cool 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, I was right. 10-round internal magazine blaster. This thing is pump action. Stock's awesome. Stock's might be a little short, but not much. Trigger's good. Everything's good. The issue is its shotgun prime. There is nothing to grab onto. Your hand just constantly slides off. It is so hard. You have to squeeze so hard to get this thing to actual prime. You need to put some grip tape or some sort of glue on it to actually get some friction, because this thing, it's insanely hard to prime this guy for no reason, just because there's nothing to grab onto that slide. And that's the only reason I put it at 35. At 34 is the Overwatch Reaper Blaster. This guy is cool. It holds 8 rounds in an internal magazine, and it's awesome. The handle's a bit weird, but it's fine. My issues is its priming bar, which is that thing on the back. You prime it back, push it forward. The issue is it's just weak. It's flexible. It's just too flexible for what it is. And that's why it sits 34. It's because the flexibility and stuff, it needs to be stable, and this one just isn't. It's still a really good semi-main blaster because it's big, but you could also throw this thing on your back or something. That's why it sits 34. At 33 is the Takedown. The Takedown is pretty much the same thing as this, but it's shotgun prime and no flexibility at all. You prime it back, you throw 8 rounds in there, you prime it forward, you fire. This thing's fun, this thing's useful, and the grip and the handle just work so well. Very nice feeling. Its issue, again, is the shotgun prime is so not grippy. Your hand just slips off of it. Even though it has that very small lip, that's not enough to do anything. This thing, to prime it, takes so much effort for no reason. I do own one of these, and I put, I think I put Flex Seal or something on it to give me some grip on it, because it just doesn't work. It's really difficult to get this thing to prime back, because there's nothing, it's too smooth. And that's the reason why it's 33. At 32 is the Supreme version. It's more expensive, but I think the colors are cooler. I like the little like camo kind of thing with the pink. It's just nice. I like it. At 31 is one of the better one-shot rifle blasters, which is crazy to say because I understand people. Sorry, this one goes above the knockout, that's for sure. The Pilot is a better knockout because how this one works is you prime it down and the entire front of the blaster opens up because you get to load around into its main barrel and then you shut the entire barrel, which is just a really cool design and works well. The sights are dumb, but that's fine. And you can even, because how it works, you can even just straight up shotgun load it with no modifications at all. So this guy does not have ball storage, and that is a shame, but it really does not need it because the entire barrel opens. It's just cool. It's useful because in a quick latch this effort, you can prime it, open this guy up, throw 2 balls in there, and shotgun your opponent. It's just cool. That's why it's 31. At 30 is this guy. This guy holds 10 balls in a very, very interesting way because you have to prime it back and you get to open the slot and then you get to load the rounds like an actual shotgun. You put them into a internal magazine. Still has that dumb trigger lock thing that you have to press down. It's dumb. But this thing is really cool and works really well. Holds 10 rounds, really good. My issue is this is very weak. It's a very, very weak blaster. It just doesn't hit hard. Rival usually hits in like 80s to 90s. This guy hits, I think it hits like low 60s, and it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. But everything else about this blaster is very, very nice. I like it. The pump grip is pretty blocky and it doesn't always feel great because of the trigger lock and the blocky pump grip, but it's still a very good blaster and is very fun to use even though it's weak. And that is why it sits 30. At 29 is this version of the Kronos, which is just a Kronos that has ball storage on the side. It has ball storage for 10 balls, and it holds five in an internal magazine that you load from the top, and it's very interesting because it is a very big blaster. This would have to be a main, but I just think this one works more just because it's easy to reload. You have plenty of balls on board, and for a Kronos, it's the worst Kronos, but it works because ball storage and internal magazine, you just got plenty of stuff to use, but because of the ball storage, you can't holster this guy. So that's why it sits 29, because you would have to use this thing as a main, and it's just not truly main potential. But everything else works really well. It just can't be holstered. 28 is, my opinion, the best one-shot rifle blaster that they ever made, which is the Fate. The Fate is a rear prime blaster that you prime back, and that will open its breech, you load around, you shut it, and you get to fire it. No onboard storage, no nothing, but this handle is godly. The handle is absolutely amazing. It's a little big, but it's just amazing. Trigger is perfectly fine. Everything about this blaster just works. The sights, again, are really stupid, but it just works, and it works well. It's really easy to holster. For a one-shot blaster, I think this one's the best one. That's my opinion. Argue in the comments below, but I think the Fate is the best rival one-shot blaster. And 27 is a blaster that hasn't even been like truly released yet at the time of this video, which is this guy. This guy's a rear prime blaster. It takes a magazine, 12 round magazine. Prime it back, forward, fire. That's about how it works. It looks like there's an end strike barrel lug, but that is not. It's just fake, and that's stupid. The front of this blaster, I think, is just stupid in general. There's just a lot of shit that doesn't have to be there. And also the stock is just too small. If you even call that a stock, it just doesn't really work well. But it does take magazines. It is spring action. It is, you know, rear prime. And it's decent. It works. It's a mid blaster. So that's why it sits 27. At 26, we finally got here the nerf Kronos. The Kronos is still the best pistol that Rival has to offer. You prime it back, you open up that little like switch thing, you load 5 balls in there, you shut it, you prime it forward, and you got 5 shots. It is still big, but Rival, you have to kind of do that. And this thing just works well. I own 2 Kronoses. They work well. They work good. Handles, awesome. Trigger is also awesome. There's nothing really bad to say about the Kronos. But because it's Rival, and it's only 5 rounds, it sits 26. Even though it's one of the greatest pistols that Rival has to offer, if not the greatest. A 25 is the Deadpool version, because it adds some stuff, and also comes with 2, which is interesting. But yeah, it just adds some cool detail on the blaster. At 24 is the Kronos Green. This one is weird looking, but I really like the fake wood handle. I'm just a fan of it. The green's okay, but I really just like the handle. And just how this blaster comes apart, it would be really easy to take the handle out and just paint the rest of the blaster to have a cool wooden handle looking guy. And 23 is this Kronos, the blue one with the stripes, because it's just cool. I like it. It's pretty nice. And 22 is the Kronos with the shark face on it. Like, come on, this thing's mean looking. My issue with it is I really wish this was at least like blue or gray, just not white. Like, come on, you put a face on it and you just keep the Kronos exactly the same except a yellow priming handle. Come on, we need some better color than just the face. But overall, this is still an insane Kronos. And at 21, the best Kronos that was ever released, the other Deadpool Kronos, and that's because it came with a foam burrito. Yes, that's why I'm putting this one as the best Kronos ever, because it came with a foam burrito. Don't judge me. At 20 is the Forerunner. The Forerunner is another shotgun. Another one of those, it doesn't fully fit in the pistol or rifle. It's that middle category. And why this one is so much higher than all the rest of them, even though it only holds, I think does this thing really hold 12 rounds? I mean, it is bigger than the other one, so maybe it holds 12. I didn't know that. I thought it held 8, but I guess it holds 12. And it's Shotgun Prime. This is what Shotgun Prime should be. Look at how much room you have right there. You can it's really a big chunk of plastic you really can grab onto and prime it well. This thing you can really just use as a main. 12 rounds, pump action, it works. It's the best one out of the ones from the other one of the past. Because this guy it works well. They finally got the pump action right. And there's nothing bad to say about that. Still has those shitty ass iron sights though. Those are just bad. But overall, this thing's really good. It's in the not mid category. It's going a little bit above mid. It's good. Yeah, it's in good or nice. And that's why it sits 20. At 19 is the Mercury. I don't care what you say. In my opinion, this is better than the Kronos. Because, yes, its prime is a bit weird. It has it has a bolt that comes outside the prime that you can switch to both sides, which is cool. But why this thing is so good is this has what I think is the best trigger in Nerf. It has the best trigger. The trigger is very light. It's like an actual competitive trigger. You barely put anything on that trigger and it's going to fire. The handle is also very, very nice feeling. If you ever held a competitive level firearm, that's what this thing feels like. It's just a lot bigger. Handle. Handle is amazing. Trigger is godly. Holds 5 rounds. It doesn't have the flip up thing. This thing just has an open area where you load 5 rounds. And it's still that weird prime thing, but it's fine. It works. I think this is better than the Kronos. Argue if you want to. My opinion, don't care. I just think it is. The handle and trigger cannot be beat on this guy. Even though I understand the prime is a bit weird, but still. At 18 is the other blaster that from X-Shot. We went from, what was it, like 50, I don't know, 54th or whatever to 18th with the X-Shot blasters. And they only made the 2, I think. And this one is the Orbit. The Orbit is 12 rounds, I believe. That uses that same weird mechanism, but because this one's not aiming at the ground and you load them from the back, you pull the thing all the way down, you load your 12 rounds, you press a button, it pushes it forward. It works. It works because it's not pointing at the ground and the balls can just fall out. And this thing does not really have a lot of locks in it that I know of. I don't really think so. And it's pump action, and it just is a good blaster. Stock, a little short. It's a lot short, but it works. It works. And I think this is a good looking blaster. It looks like a blaster from Halo. And that's about all I have to say about this guy. At 17 is the Jupiter. The Jupiter, for some reason, is like one of the most expensive rival blasters that you can buy right now. That and the Overwatch Tracer blaster, which is weird because this thing holds, I believe, 8 to 10 rounds. I've never gotten my hands on one of these, but this thing also has that really nice trigger and a really nice handle. And this thing is the only bolt action rival blaster that was ever made, and it is cool. I really want one of these guys. And the stock, everything about this thing, it's beautiful. It works well. It's a nice feeling rifle. Its issue is it holds only 8 to 10 rounds. It just doesn't have a lot of capacity for the size of this thing. And it also comes with the best rival target that they ever released. You would hit the middle of that target and it'll make a ding sound because it bounces off a piece of metal down below. This is just an insane blaster. I really wish I could put it higher, but because it's low capacity, that's the only reason it's at 17th. At 16th is the Zeus. This is the second blaster to ever be released in Rival. The Zeus is a semi-auto electric blaster that holds 12 magazines. The Zeus is 16th place because how you have to load the magazine is weird. It's not perfect. It's kind of difficult to get that thing in there and really get it seated, especially if this is old, which it is now. But overall, semi-auto electric rival blaster. That's how rival should be, at least. Well, it should be full auto, but just getting to the electric blaster, it works. It works well. Love the design of this. I really like the iron sights on this guy. Handle is all right. The trigger's pretty heavy for what it is. When you pull that trigger, you really feel like you're shoving a ball through those flywheels. But it's a pretty good rival blaster. That's why it's 16th. Nothing wrong with it. At 15th is the Helios. This is just the better blaster from the past, like I said. It should have been Side Prime, and they did release one Side Prime, and still came with a 7-round magazine. So this thing takes magazines, takes any magazine you want. It's Side Prime. I'm pretty sure you can put the little bar thing on each side, I'm pretty sure. Thick handle, that's because of the magazine again. Decent trigger, good stock. There's nothing wrong with the stock. This thing is very CQB-like because just how tight it is and how small it is. It works well. It's a rival spring powered blaster, magazine fed, so it's 15th. At 14th is this guy, which is not the shotgun one. This is the one that only fires one ball at a time, but it's shotgun prime, magazine fed. You load it from the back, which sometimes has issues, but usually it doesn't. And it has a stock that you can flip. You know, it's a stock you can flip out, flip in. And overall, it works. It works pretty dang well. And there's nothing really bad to say. Ergonomics are good. Actually, just your like line of sight where you're shooting is a bit weird because they have some dumb stuff they have up top on it, but that's about it. At 13 is the Nerf Rival Shotgun. This thing is my personal favorite Rival Blaster. Yes, this is one of my personal favorite Rival Blasters. I actually made one that I put two together and glued them together so it fires 4 rounds at once. This guy is the stock version, so it only fires 2. This guy holds 12 rounds in a magazine fed at the top. Like I said, just how the top magazine is, sometimes you have trouble getting it in there. You really have to make sure you prime this thing. You have to prime it back and give it a little tug to make sure you load it and push it forward. As long as you do that, you really don't get jams, but this thing is known for jamming. But the shotgun prime is amazing. This is a top tier shotgun prime. You really can feel that thing just rack back and forth. It's awesome. Handle is pretty interesting because it has that little lip thing on it. I think it works well. It feels decent. Trigger, awesome. Nothing really bad to say about this guy. I do like the iron sights on this guy, and this thing fires 2 balls at once, so you do only have 6 shots with it. That is an issue, but I do not care. It's a rival shotgun. It's 13th. At 12th is the rival Charger. I think the Charger is very interesting and very useful for definitely like HVZ or something, because it's an internal 12 round internal magazine blaster. You pull it back, you load 12 rounds in it, and then you have semi-auto goodness, and it looks really cool. Love the look of this guy. Handle could be a bit weird feeling, but it probably is fine. Stock is flat, but it works. It works well. There's no real issues with this guy. This guy is just... This is definitely the rival blaster that you take on the field if you're going to scavenge. This is that blaster. One of them, at least. At 11 is the last Overwatch blaster on this list. It's the Overwatch Soldier 76 blaster. This thing is massive. It is huge. This picture does not give it the scale that it desires. But its issues is the stock. It is too short. It's too short of stock. And this thing is also full auto with a cool kind of recoil mechanism. Well, kind of. It just looks cool. But the actual area to load it, you have to like open this thing. And it's so tiny. It's so tight in there. It's just crazy. This thing only holds like 30 to 40 rounds, which is also crazy for a full auto rival blaster. It's just massive. It's really hard to reload, but it's still a full auto rival blaster. That's why it's 11th. But if you're really trying to get a full auto rival blaster, I do not recommend this one. At 10, we're finally at the top 10. This guy is another also full auto rival blaster, but I think this one is better because it actually has a good stock. It has a good length to it, and it does take magazines, but it takes priority magazines or whatever. It takes magazines that only go to this blaster. It takes 40 round magazines. If you can't tell, these magazines are massive, and you will have a lot of fun if you have multiple magazines. But if you don't, you're going to run out of ammo fast, and reloading this mag is a hassle. But it's very well made, very well designed, very good looking blaster. Nothing really bad to say about it. It's a full auto rifle blaster that takes magazines, big magazines. I really wish Nerf released the magazine that you could just buy as another pack, but they didn't. So you really have to scavenge for them. But if you do have this guy with a couple magazines, you'll have a lot of fun. It will perform very well, and that's why it sits 10th. At 9th is the Pathfinder. The Pathfinder was actually very weird for me because I picked up the Pathfinder not long ago, and this is actually my other favorite Rival Blaster ever because this thing shoots so incredibly straight, it's crazy. Like, I've never had a Rival Blaster that shoots as straight as this guy. And it has a nice stock. The stock is a little short, but not by much, and it's very fine. Handle, great. Trigger is alright. It has a 12-round magazine, you know, magazine fed, take out the magazine, put in a new one, stuff like that. It also has like a pull tab on the bottom of this magazine, but it's too small, you can't really use it. And there's no, there's no rapid fire with this guy. It's only pull back, forward fire, which is fine, because this guy kind of does act like a sniper rifle, to be honest with you. Just because how accurate this thing is. It's not really a rifle, it's more of a sniper rifle. The scope on this thing sucks so bad, though. It's so bad. You're supposed to be able to adjust the scope to your own settings and stuff, but it just falls out of its alignment really easily, and it's just really dumb. I'm planning on just cutting it off soon. But yeah, overall, this is an insane pump action Rival Blaster. This is one of the best springers they ever made in Rival. At 8 is another brand new Rival Blaster, the Challenger. Wait, yeah, the Challenger. No, I got that. But this guy is really weird because it comes with a banana mag, which is the first one we ever seen before. But this thing is pretty much just a Rival Strife. You load a mag in there, semi-auto goodness, wrap it, get those balls out of there. No stock, doesn't need a stock. It does have a really cool thing on the back, which is like a lanyard that you can connect to something. It's kind of cool. Up front, still way too much stuff going on. Has that same faux nerf barrel, which you can't put a nerf barrel on it. It's just fake. But for a semi-auto Rival Blaster, I don't think it gets better than this one, even though it's brand new. They just released it. You can buy this thing on Amazon right now, I think. At 7 is the Hera. This thing is amazing. Another electric blaster that's magazine fed. The stock on this thing is great. This thing's just so nice. This thing's just awesome feeling. There's nothing that goes wrong with this guy. This is the CQB electric blaster you would use just because how tight it is, how nice it is. It is a bit blocky, but nothing wrong with it. It has a paddle release on the back, which is just nice. This is just an awesome Rival Blaster, so it is 7th. At 6th is the very last Springer on this list, the Artemis. The Artemis is one of the greatest Springers Nerf ever made. This is a internal magazine fed that you pull back and load 30 rounds into it, and then you have 30 rounds of pump action. You can also go, rapid fire with this thing, holding down the trigger. It just works well. Handle's great, trigger's fine. I'm not really a fan of this pump grip, thing. But it works. It works decently. No, it works perfectly. This thing works well. They've done nothing wrong to it. That's why this is the greatest Springer Rival ever made. At 5 is the Quantum. This is pretty much a cheap 100-round full auto Rival Blaster. It has a hopper that you open up, you load 100 rival balls in there, you close it, you have to flip a switch. There is no rev trigger. You flip a switch and it's just kind of on, and then you pull the trigger to have this thing rattle off. This thing's cheap. This thing works. This thing's pretty much just a cheap version of the Nemesis. And coming in at 4 is the actual Nemesis, just because the ergonomics on this guy I think is just better. Another hopper fed, 100 rounds. Nice handle, nice trigger, nice stock, which this guy does not have those. They're kind of blocky and, creaky, cheaper plastic. But can't go wrong with the Nemesis. 100 rounds of full auto. It works well. Nothing bad to say. At 3 is the surprise of the entire list, the Monolith. Another Adventure Force blaster, the last one that was able to claim the top 3, which is crazy. This thing holds about 40 to 50 rounds in good old full auto goodness. Stock feels awesome. Big ass rev trigger, which is not perfect. The handle's a little small, but it works. This thing works, and this thing is so easy to load. You open up a giant window on the side, you dump rounds in, and then you're ready to go. It just works insanely well. You did very good, Adventure Force, on this one. And at 2 is the Perseus. Now hear me out on this one. Yes, it's at 2. I have reasons for this, and that's because, well, it also comes with a rechargeable battery pack, which is awesome. Love that. The stock is amazing. This thing is really good, fitting in your hand and arm. Its rev switch, Its trigger is also, I'm not a fan of it. But loading this guy only holds 50 rounds. It fires at them insanely fast. It's like 8 rounds a second. And it's too fast for a 50 round hopper. Especially one that this one you just kind of open from the top. And it's just very long and thin. So it is hard to reload this thing. Yes, you can buy aftermarket parts, but this list is for just stock blasters. And for stock, it works. It works extremely well. Don't get me wrong. That's why it's second. But just trying to load this guy, you're going to lose balls. It's just hard to reload this thing. And there's also a switch on the side that you can release its entire hopper. And if you hit that, your blaster will stop working. And you'll have to put it back in and do all this stuff to get this thing running again. And at 1 is the Prometheus. Is the rival minigun. 200 rounds, full auto. You can't go wrong with this guy. I have seen little babies take the field with this thing. Little 6-year-olds run on the field with this thing, and they are the greatest enemy to ever exist. I literally saw a 7-year-old with this thing who would run out there, fire all its rounds, and then come back, and their parents would reload it for them, and they were just a menace on the field. You cannot go wrong with this guy. The only thing that you can go wrong with this guy with is your wallet, because the amount of money you have to spend on the rival balls is crazy. But this thing works. It works extremely well, has a rechargeable battery on it. It's a rival minigun. This is what rival is. Full auto rival balls, because rival balls are not always that accurate, and they're really easy to dodge, so you have to just send as many as you can downrange. And with that, thanks for watching, guys. I hope to see you next time in another video, another, Nerf line ranking list. But pretty soon, we're moving on from Nerf lines. We're going to look at like Dart Zone Pro and stuff like that, Adventure Force, X-Shot. We're going to be looking at all different kinds of stuff in the future. And with that, thanks for watching, guys. Hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.